Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first ever virtual annual stockholders meeting of our bank, the Philippine Bank of Communications. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. We would like to call the meeting to order. Before I proceed, I would like to introduce to you the members of your board of directors who are present here today. We have our Vice Chairman, Mr. Leonardo Dayao. We have our President and Chief Executive Officer, Patricia Macy. We have the Executive Committee Chairman, Mr. Lucio Ko. We have Mrs. Susan Ko. We have Bunsit Carlos Chung. We have Mr. Levi Labra. And we have Mr. Gregorio Yu present. Our independent directors who are present, we have Director Jesus Halandoni Jr., we have Director Bienvenido Laguesma, and Director Hilda Pico. We are still waiting for Mr. Conrad Gloria and Mr. Jack Wang to dial in. They might be having some problems, but we will proceed nevertheless. We also have Mr. Henry Uy, our erstwhile and loyal board advisor, and our corporate secretary, Mr. Michael Lau. May we know from the secretary if notices of today's annual stockholders meeting were distributed to the stockholders as required by the relevant issuances of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and if there's a quorum for the transaction of business.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Following the SEC's guidelines on alternative modes of distributing the notices, we have caused the publication in 2 newspapers of general circulation for 2 consecutive days, and in both print as well as online format. I also certify that they are present today via video conferencing stockholders owning a total of 423,847,819 shares, representing at least 88.18% of the capital stock. We therefore have a quorum for the transaction of the business, Mr. Chairman.
We now come to the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of the stockholders, which was the annual meeting held on June 4, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, to save some time and considering that the minutes have been made available to the stockholders, I move that the reading of the minutes of the previous annual stockholders meeting held on June 4, 2019 be dispensed with, and that such minutes be approved without reading.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the reading of the minutes of the annual stockholders meeting be dispensed with and that the same be approved without reading. Are there any objections? There being none, the motion is hereby approved. The next item is the management report for the year ended December 31, 2019. I now ask the President to discuss this in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. I hope that you are safe and well. 2019 was a significant year for PBCOM. It marked the bank's 80th year as well as the 5th year of the entry of Mr. Lucio Ko. We have prepared a video to highlight the achievements in the last 5 years, including our 2019 financial performance. Please watch this. Thank you.
Okay. We now propose to take up the discussion of the report and other matters which any stockholder may wish to take up at the end of the meeting so that we can proceed with the agenda in an orderly fashion and have more time for discussion later on. Can I request a motion on the management report?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the management report just rendered on the audited financial statements be approved and made part of the records of the corporation.
I second the motion.
Are there any objections? There being none, the motion is approved. The next item is the ratification and approval of all the corporate acts of the Board of Directors and Management since the last annual stockholders meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that all acts, proceedings, transactions, and agreements authorized by and entered into by the Board of Directors, Executive Committee, and officers of the bank for and on behalf of the bank from the last annual stockholders meeting to date, as shown in the minutes of the meetings of the board and its committees, as well as in the information statement, be approved, confirmed, and ratified.
I second the motion.
Are there any objections from anyone? There being none, the motion is approved. We now go to the next item, which is the proposal to amend the bank's bylaws to reflect our commitment to abide by good corporate governance practices and also to include the BSP prescribed board level committees of the bank. The summary of the amendments to the bank's bylaws that we are recommending are flashed on the screen and was also discussed in detail under the information statement distributed to you as stockholders. I'll give you a few minutes to go through the summary of amendments.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the proposed amendments to the bank's bylaws as presented be approved and that all unqualified votes be cast in favor of the said approval.
I second the motion.
Are there any objections? If there are none, the motion is approved. We now come to the next item, which is the election of the members of the Board of Directors. It is mandatory that independent directors be elected to the board. There are at least 5 slots for independent director in the board. Only nominees whose names appear in the final list of candidates shall be eligible for election. Mr. Secretary, can you inform the body of the nominations that the corporation has received for election to the Board of Directors?
Mr. Chairman, the Nominations Committee has received, evaluated, and approved the nominations for election of the following as members of the Board of Directors for 2020 to 2021. For regular directors, first Eric O. Recto, Leonardo B. Dial, Patricia May T. C., Lucio L. Co., Susan P. Co., Jack E. Huang, Bunsit Carlos G. Chung, Levi B. Labra, Gregorio T. Yu, Jaime J. Bautista, and for the independent directors, Conrado A. Gloria Jr., Jesus S. Landoni Jr., Bienvenido E. Laguesma, Emmanuel Y. Mendoza, and last, Hilda E. Pico.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the nominations be closed and that the secretary be directed and authorized to cast all the votes of the stockholders present or represented at this meeting equally among the 15 nominees.
I second the motion.
Are there any objections? There being none, the motion is approved. The secretary is hereby directed and authorized to cast all votes of the stockholders present or represented at this meeting equally among the nominees. The chairman now therefore declares the 15 nominees as the duly elected members of the board of directors for the current year to act as such until their successors are duly elected and qualified in accordance with the bylaws. The next item is the appointment of our company's external auditor.
I move that the accounting firm of SGB and Company be reappointed as external auditors of the company for the current year ending December 31, 2020.
I second the motion.
Are there any objections from the floor? There being none, the motion is approved. The firm SGV and Company is therefore reappointed external auditor of the company for the current year ending December 31, 2020. As I mentioned earlier, we can now have the discussion on the management report and other matters with the stockholders, which the stockholders may wish to take up. Participating stockholders are also given the opportunity to submit questions or remarks via this live stream portal by using the Q&A button found at the bottom of your screens. Are there any questions from the stockholders?
Mr. Chairman, we have none at the moment. We have not received any questions from any stockholders.
Okay, I will give this a minute just to provide for some room to anyone who may not have fast internet connection. Mr. Corporate Secretary, are there any questions?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I think we have given stockholders enough opportunity. If there are no other matters, which I will now entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move that the meeting be adjourned, Mr. Chairman.
I second the motion.
It has been moved that the meeting be adjourned and seconded. If there are no objections, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you very much.